Hi, I'm Melvyn, and welcome to the Creative Influencer Show. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about three fatal failures facing entrepreneurs. Well, and welcome to today's show. And today's show, we're going to be talking about three fatal failures. Yep. And as you know, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we make these mistakes ourselves. And so we're going to look at these three fatal failures and how we can kind of avoid them. Yeah. All right, and so to start off with, I've got this quote from William Bolitho, and he says that the most important thing in life is not to capitalize on your gains. Any fool can do that. The really important thing is to profit from your losses. That requires intelligence, and it makes the difference between a man of sense and a fool. So, we all go through failures. We all have our own hang-ups. We all have our own slips. And so the question is, what do you do with that? Do you, wallow yourself in wallow in self-pity, or do you kind of learn from this failures or these mistakes? Yeah, and like what John Maxwell says, do you fail forward? And so in today's episode, we're going to look at three failures at the personal level. And this will be in today's episode. So, first, we're going to be talking about the failing to focus. Yeah. Now, failing to focus is a really big thing. As entrepreneurs, we are all pressed for time, and the minute that we get distracted, that is when things go down here. So, level one is where we talk about being distracted. So when we talk about being distracted, what are some of the things that we are typically talking about? Well, one is that you get distracted. You check your email or Facebook or Twitter every time the notification goes off. Um, that happens to all of us sometimes when you see the bing and the light, and you just like, you gotta have to check your email to see who's emailing you, and as if if you miss that email, the whole world's going to come crumbling down. I think from your own experiences as well, you would know that that isn't quite the case. Yeah, so in one instance, it's really for me, it's right now, it's really just turning off almost all forms of notification. And one of the key notifications that I keep it on, it's from basically from text messages from my wife, because we got young children and at home, so sometimes she may need some assistance. But other than that, really, the email, the Facebook, the social media, whatnot, all this can wait. And when I'm working, what I want to do is to minimize my distraction. So that's one level of distraction. And I like this tweet particularly from Stephen Hoban, and he said that you have reached the very last page of the internet. We hope you have enjoyed your browsing. Yeah, but haven't we all experienced that at some point in time? You might spend hours, on the internet reading reviews of which plugin is the best for doing this for your WordPress site, and before you know it, a few hours is gone, and you haven't made any progress, or you haven't done any important work at all. During the last few hours, and you wonder, where did all the time go to? Yeah, and so that is where that's another way that we get distracted. So, what is the solution here? We talked so much about getting distracted by the notification and getting distracted from browsing the internet. So, the solution here that I'm proposing, it's the three priorities. And the first one is basically knowing your priorities. Secondly, it's scheduling your priorities. And third is to take action on your priorities. So let's dive a little bit deeper and unpack what each of these mean. So when I said know your priorities, basically you need to identify which are the activities that give you the highest leverage. As entrepreneurs, sometimes we have to run parallel. You have to be the marketing person. You also have to be the person who fixes the website. You have to be the person who records sessions like this. And so at the end of the day, you really need to know which is the one that gives you the highest leverage, which is the one that you really must do. Because these are the one that is going to convert, or these are the ones that's going to give you the it's going to build your trust, for example. So one of the thing that I do in my business is every time when I'm working on something, I would ask myself, is this building trust with my community? And if it is, then this is something that I want to do. Because sometimes just to say that is it money making, it might lead me down the wrong way, and it has in the past. So I do not just want to be constrained by looking at is this an income generating activity, but instead I want to ask myself, what is this building trust? Is this building engagement with my audience? Yeah, and if it is, that is something that I want to do, something that I want to invest my time in. If it is not, then I either want to leave it to another time, or I might want to delegate it to, say, a virtual assistant, for example. So the first one is really knowing your priorities, which activities gives you the highest leverage. Now secondly, it's not enough to just know your priorities, because some of us, we do know our priorities, because, like, for instance, I do know that exercise is really, really important for me. Yeah, as an entrepreneur, and as someone who is really out there, and sometimes we go through so much stress. Exercise is really something that is critical. Yeah, but knowing that priority, it's not enough, because at the end of the day, if we don't schedule it, it might never happen. So I remember in the past where I'll say that, well, I'll do the run in the evening, but after the whole day of work, you get so tired, and the last thing you want to do is go out and be sweaty. So what I do now is I look at scheduling my priorities, set aside time to carry out those activities. So once you've identified what are the highest leverage activities, the next thing is really to set aside time. And some people find that morning is the best. Some people find that afternoon is the best. The point is, there is no one right time. There is only a right time for you. So work according to your biorhythm, which timing is the best for you. For some people, it's in the morning. For example, for me, the best time is in the morning, not just in terms of biorhythm, but that's when before the kids gets up. Because once the kids gets up, everything goes into chaos. Yeah, and any one of you here who have got kids, and you work from home, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so first, know your priorities. Secondly, schedule your priorities. And third is to take action on your priorities. Now, some people will say that, well, of course, after you schedule priorities, you would actually do it. That isn't quite the case. As you know, sometimes the alarm clock goes off, and you just don't feel like doing it. All right, and so here is where Stephen Pressfield talks about in his book, the war of art, and that's where he says that you got to do the work. Yeah, you got to fight the resistance. You got to do the work. So you schedule, and when the time comes, you actually have to get things done. Yeah. So the solution to being distracted, I think, first is to know your priorities. Yeah, schedule that, and then take actions on those priorities. Now let's look at another level 2. This is where we go bouncing from idea to idea. So as entrepreneurs and as creatives, sometimes we fall into this thing whereby we find that, this idea is interesting, I want to work on it, and then the next thing you know, something else comes up, and you want to do that as well. Now, so one of the things that we talked about here is that sometimes as entrepreneurs, we suffer from this thing called ADHD, yeah, attention deficiency hyperactive disorder. We have the inclination to jump from an idea to another, and sometimes without even ever seeing any idea to its fruition. Yeah, and this is different from multitasking, because this is just basically jumping from one idea to another. Yeah, and so In his book, The Accidental Creative, author Todd Henry actually talks about this, and he calls this the priority ping pong. And so let's take a look at what Todd Henry says in his book. There is a particular chapter there on focus, and he talks about this. Because as creatives, we tend to gravitate towards possibilities. Many creative people wrestle with focus. We can quickly become fascinated with new ideas or bounce from unsolved problem to unsolved problem without really solving any of them. This priority ping pong prevents us from engaging in the kind of deeply focused thinking that facilitates insight and moves the needle on our project. Now, I'm sure many of us here could identify with what Todd Henry has just talked about. We gravitate towards possibility. We want to go from one idea to another, and sometimes we just don't get anything done. Yeah, and so what is the solution to that? Well, Todd Henry has given us quite a fair bit in terms of what you can do. And if you haven't checked out his book, The Accidental Creative, I strongly encourage you to do that. It's a great book, and you should check out his acronym FRESH. That is something that you need to do. Okay, so in his book, for this particular chapter, he gives us a three-prong approach to kind of addressing this issue about priority ping pong. So he says that you need a new practice for thinking deeply about your work. So number one is, he calls it define. What it means is that you want to lock in on the heart of the problem quickly. In my interpretation here, when we talk about define, is to really be very clear about what is our ultimate goal. Yeah, and then secondly is to refine. That's why he calls it establish your game plan to center your activities around the most crucial priorities. This is pretty much like what I mentioned earlier in the first part, where we talk about knowing your priorities and then scheduling your priorities. But here what he's saying is that you kind of organize your game plan, center your activities around the most crucial priorities, and you want to make sure that whatever you're doing kind of lead you towards your most critical priorities, and that should lead you towards your goal. Yeah, and the third thing is to cluster. And that's really to organize your work so that you are minimizing distraction and staying on course. Okay, so these are the three things that Todd Henry has given us. So by doing deep work, it not only gets the work done, but it really gets the work that matters done. Yeah, so you go deeper into the topic than better than many others. And what that means is that your ability to gain insights and your ability to find a solution that is more desirable than others, it's highly possible. And what this means is that your solution is going to be more unique, and likelihood it is going to meet the needs of your end user more. All right, so that's level 2, and now let's take a look at level 3. Level 3 is something that I think some of you may be familiar with. I certainly have, and that is what we call a parallel entrepreneurs. Now, parallel entrepreneurs or parallel, it's different from multitasking. Multitasking is just saying that at one point in time when you're doing a particular task, you're also doing something else. So while you're working on your article, for example, you're also checking your Facebook, you're also at the same time messaging your friend. That's multitasking. But when we talk about parallel, the entrepreneurs, it's literally taking multitasking to a whole new level. For example, like trying to run two companies at the same time. Okay, so someone who has done this is Damesh Shah. He's a co-founder and CTO, Chief Technology Officer on Hotspot. And here's what he said. He said that my biggest mistake was attempting to be a parallel entrepreneur, whereby I was foolishly trying to run two companies at the same time. Startups are an all-consuming thing. It is hard to split time and passion across multiple ones. And startups are hard enough as it is, but balancing two at the same time is almost always a bad idea. And I totally agree with that. Now, this is taken from the Quora. So we'll put the link there in the show notes itself. So basically, what the solution here is, instead of engaging in parallel strategies, go for the main one. Yeah, go for the main one. So the solution here is to focus and to do just one thing, just one thing. All right, and another great entrepreneur that I know, Oren Hoffman, what he suggests is that series beats parallel. So what you want to do is you want to have one overarching clear strategy and one big bet. So instead of having like 10 strategies going out at the same time when you are tackling your new startup, you want to have one clear strategy and one big major bet. That's one thing that you want to focus on at the strategies level. At the path level, what you really want to do is to do one new thing at a time. So he gave the example, for instance, if you're looking at marketing and you are thinking SEO, yes, search engine optimization is going to be the key strategy for you, then you want to be focusing on that. You don't want to be doing SEO at the same time. You want to be doing, landing pages, squeeze pages. You don't want to be doing 3 or 4 or 5 things at the same time. You just want to focus on one new thing at a time. And if you think about it makes sense, because at the end of the day, when you get the results, you know that you know exactly that it is attributable to the search engine optimization. But if you kind of do a bunch of things, you really wouldn't know which one was the contributory factor. Yeah, and the third one is activities, focusing on the accomplishing one core task at any given time. And that's pretty much the same as what we talked about earlier in level 2 when we talk about priority ping pong, and also in level 1 where we talked about being distracted. Now, in my research in this area, it was very interesting because I came into a direct contrast what Aaron Hoffman said. I saw an article which is in direct contrast to what he said. And that is said by another great entrepreneur that we all know, and that's Guy Kawasaki. Well, Guy, of course, as you know him, he thinks that life is parallel, and he simply go at odds, at least in my interpretation from what Hoffman is saying. So Guy said proceed serially. Yeah. Some people think that it is first raise money, then hire the team, then get sales, then go public. But life is not serial. And his solution is life is parallel. I need to raise money, I need to hire, I need to sell, I need to support all at the same time. Okay, so in my experience, I think both of them are right in the context that they are talking about. Because in Hoffman's case, really what he's talking about is to be really focused on what we're doing at the strategy level. Whereas in Guy's case, what he's talking about is that you don't do something and wait until you complete that, then you move on to the next thing, and then the next thing. Well, in my experience, I think what's important for me is to stay focused on one strategy or one area that my business needed most at the point in time. And in situation when you're bootstrapping, like many of us do, where you don't have the time nor the money to bring in other people, really you have to live life in parallel. And you simply must just do many things at the same time. However, once you got it up and running, I think it's clear, beneficial for you to stay focused and focus on one thing that you do really, really well. So my suggestion here is have one rallying goal. Yeah, have one key rallying goal. That what is your one ultimate goal? So at this point in time, for example, in building my personal brand online, what is my one ultimate goal? And my one ultimate goal is to be able to build trust with the people who gives me the attention, who pays attention, who wants to listen to what I have to say. And in order to do that, I really have to provide value, and I have to make sure that the value that I provide it's good. And so that's my one rallying goal. It's what I'm doing, really providing value. If it is, I want to do that, and I want to do that more, and I want to do it better. Yeah. But if it's not, then I really want to consider if that's something that I want to do. So the three questions that I ask myself: first is what's my ultimate goal. Second one is what I'm doing contributing to that goal, and the third one is, am I the best person to do it? So for example, as I said, then building my personal brand, really the ultimate goal is to be able to build trust with my audience. And so like doing sessions like this, is it contributing to that goal? Yes, it is. It is contributing to that goal because I'm putting content out there and I'm demonstrating my proficiency, and I'm also connecting with you in other ways as well. Yeah. And am I the best person to do it? Obviously, because in this instance, I have to be the one who do it and not somebody else. Yeah. And so that really, really is the way that I do to kind of get myself focused. And so this comes to the end of today's episode. So I would like you to kind of check out the article that I've written. Are you the best person for the job? And that's an article I've written some time back. But do check that out because there is something additional that I say there. And in next week's episode, we're going to look at another group of fatal failures, and that is going to be the failure to establish a network. All right, and until then, take care, and I'll see you again soon, and go forth and do great stuff. Bye bye.